Hello and welcome to Effective Writing, a 1 to 3 day self-paced seminar which is intended to help you improve bullet writing and also teach you some basic concepts that are related to decorations, awards, submissions, and evaluations. Thank you for joining us, and if you have any feedback, do not hesitate to contact us. And let's go ahead and begin. On day one, we're going to learn how to get started, how to focus ourselves, how to extract some of the facts, and then we're going to cover some of the basic facts related to bullet writing. Day two, we'll cover the performance levels associated with grading bullets and also thinking about writing bullets. We're going to discuss some of the traps. We're going to cover very briefly some of the evaluation requirements when it comes to bullet writing. And on day three, we're going to do a self-paced practice where we're able to maybe write ourselves our own APR or maybe write ourselves on a 1206 for our own decorations. Before we can write any type of award, decoration, or evaluation, it sometimes pays dividends to be organized. One of the things we need to start doing is, first off, look ahead. What I mean by that is you need to kind of have an idea of when your quarterly submissions are going to be coming up, when your annual submissions are coming up, when your evaluations are due, when your feedbacks are due. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to effectively set timelines. These timelines should include things like scheduling feedbacks and conducting feedbacks. These timelines would also include what time do you need to initiate your award submission, your decoration, or evaluation. Throughout the period, you should definitely make sure that you log what you're doing and definitely keep tabs on your subordinates and your teammates so that way you're able to gather all the data that you need in preparation for that big moment. After that, you need to be familiarized a little bit. If I recommend this at all, it's to be familiarized with what is expected on your format, what is expected on your submission. And so in order to do that, definitely start looking into your Officer Enlisted Evaluations AFI, which is 362406, and also on your AFMAN for Awards and Memorialization Program. Highly recommended. Additionally, we have a link here for AFPC, which I highly recommend you click on that, and it will take you to their website, which provides you with plenty of useful resources to be able to pull up and figure out award timelines, submission criteria, and so on. Last but not least, you definitely want to make sure that you are aware of restrictions from your leadership when it comes to writing some of these documents. Some organizations at the MatchCom, usually more commonly at the wing level, have writing guides which restrict specific acronyms, specific abbreviations. So you definitely want to keep an eye on those so that way you don't make a confusing decoration or your award submission gets kicked back for simple grammatical problems. And as I was saying before, AFPC provides a really good website that you can utilize to be able to track awards. Their Special Trophies and Awards website has a list of all Air Force recognized awards. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here. The Geico Military Service Award. And what's cool about this, once it opens up and you click on the open button, you're going to be able to see the service period for the award and then the criteria for the award, including font size, what form it needs to be submitted, and more importantly, what the requirements are, which in this case, you need to be able to describe how the local or base community was benefited by the members' actions on and off duty, and how is that related to drug and alcohol abuse prevention, fire safety and prevention, and traffic safety and accident prevention. Another thing that this website is useful for is to give you an expectation of when you think you're going to have to submit these awards. Remember, awards come from the higher level down to the lower levels, and so the Air Force level suspense is not going to be the same suspense as your unit. You need to put in a cushion for that. I would almost anticipate sometimes units, groups, or wings will put the suspense several months before the Air Force level suspense. And so those are some of the things that you need to keep on your radar when you're tracking these. Once we get all the data, we could have a phenomenal troop. We can have a phenomenal airman. However, if his performance doesn't fall in line with the unit, group, wing, or even higher levels expectations, our member could be not competitive for either an award or for promotion. It's important that we understand their current responsibilities and expectations and also be able to see if the member is already performing at future grade levels so that we can justify promotion. One way that I like to do this is I like to reference AFI 1-1 and also, more importantly, the enlisted force structure. Again, you should be able to use this during feedback so that you can show your subordinate what he or she needs to do to be able to meet the next grade and exceed current expectations. Lastly, you want to measure that performance to their job description and expectations. And again, if you're writing an award, measure it against their award criteria. And if you're writing an evaluation, you want to again measure it against current and the next grade. I will provide you here in the next couple of slides, I think the next 5 slides, with some links to the different missions, expectations, and strategies of the United States AFSouth, Southern Command, uh, the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Secretary of the Air Force, and the National Defense Strategy. There will be links embedded into the pictures, so all you have to do is click on the pictures and it'll take you to the resource. Here's our National Defense Strategy with its lines of efforts of lethality, partnerships, and reform. Link provided with the picture. The U.S. Air Force Core missions, air and space superiority, global strike, rapid global mobility, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and command and control. The priorities levied upon the United States Air Force by the Secretary of the Air Force. Build the United States Space Force, modernize the air and space forces we need, grow strong leaders and resilient families, strengthen our allies and partners. You have General Brown's action orders, which highlight his vision for the Air Force. And last but not least, United States Southern Command's mission, which is strengthen partnerships, counter threats, and build our team. So at this point, we are prepared. We set our timelines, we had our feedbacks, we have the criteria of whatever we're going to write, and now it's time to, no kidding, start extracting those facts. And the first stage of bullet writing, you don't want to just write bullets. You definitely want to write statements that are filled with all of the information that you can get. The more information you have, the more measurable data you can put in, and the more details you get, the more you're going to be able to provide accurate information, which is going to fulfill an accuracy, brevity, and specificity requirement later on. We'll touch base on those here in a little bit. Again, don't worry yourself with writing bullets or making statements at this point. Just extract the facts and build your initial document by simply just writing as much information as you can and figuring out where that information goes to. And when we're extracting the facts, the first thing we want to start doing is zeroing in on the action itself. What did I do? What did my member do that I need to be able to capture? And usually you'll be able to capture some key powerful words when you're doing this, such as like, I don't know, inspected or led or organized. And before you know it, some of these things are going to help you later on as you transition into writing your bullet. You want to be able to link that action to some kind of immediate and long-term impact. And the reason why we want to do this is because later on we're going to discover that there's 3 parts to a bullet. We have an action, an impact, and a result. And so as we're writing this paragraph of information, we need to be always thinking about how does the action link to a particular impact or result. And then we want to check the data. I cannot stress this enough. We don't want to make up information. We don't want to create ambiguous information. We want to be able to make sure that the data is truthful, whether it's checking through other sources, action reports, maybe feedback from other people, other teams that have worked with your member or yourself. and we want to make sure that that data is truthful. Then we want to categorize that information. Our awards, for example, have typically two sections, which is performance and leadership in primary duties, and then you have whole main concept. Well, where does that information that I'm writing fit into in the 1206 or in that award submission? Or in the EPR section, you have your primary duty section, you have your followership and leadership, and then you have your harm and concept bullets. Where does that piece of information going to fit as far as that evaluation goes? And so when we do that, we're able to inadvertently create our evaluation or our decoration without even getting started on it. And that's definitely an advantage for you that you're going to definitely want to take advantage of. Then what I recommend is do not discard this information. Again, re-verify it and put it to the side. Don't ever discard any information until you have completely done with your submission or your evaluation. And then edit, 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 edit. I cannot stress this enough. There will be a point where you have gotten your paragraph and you're going to start seeing some things that maybe don't add up and you need to start verifying. Cannot stress this enough. Verify, edit, edit, edit. And so now we have our statements, we have our paragraphs, we have our data, and guess what? Now we're ready to write our bullet. Before I get into that, we're going to cover the basics of bullet writing. And more importantly, I'm going to use this moment to introduce you to two concepts which are super critical whenever it comes to writing your bullets that will definitely help you get that perspective that you need. And the first concept that we're going to be discussing today is going to be the TOS concept. TOS stands for Tactical, Operational, and Strategic. And so, tactical level. At the tactical level, we're trying to capture things like specific tasks that when you start adding them together or when you start looking into what their immediate impact is, they yield some kind of result that impacts the next level or the next two levels, operational or strategic. But more often than not, at the tactical level, we're going to be aggregating things that add and impact the operational level. Then we have the operational level. At this level, we're starting to see how airmen's skill sets and experience start adding up. And so their expertise now becomes stronger and they're able to influence a little bit of a larger scope. Sometimes you'll have actions of NCOs or master sergeants whose effect, impact, group level, wing level, or depending on where you are, theater or joint operational areas. And so it's important to understand that at the operational level, now we're starting to broaden our scope a little bit more. And now we're not just seeing a simple task being accomplished, but maybe a conglomeration of an expertise, or maybe the synergistic effect of team building or mentoring. Lastly, we have the strategic level. And this level is typically where you're going to see your senior NCOs, your chiefs, and your field grade officers and company grade officers. And at the strategic level, typically we're now influencing a multi-tier, multi-layer scope. And at this point, typically you need to have certain competencies that are usually gained through time and experience. And those competencies influence peoples and teams to achieve a usually operational or strategic level objective. And so at this point, you're going to see more teams mentoring multiple teams. You're going to see maybe combining different units, different wings, and you're going to see, again, very broad effect. The TOS concept, again, is not a written Bible. I can't really clearly define how to say what it is. It's just a concept, and it's basically a way to help us identify either as a writer or as a board member what level this person is, whether it's set by expectation or whether it's set by simple effect of their actions. The ABS concept. Again, this is a concept, just an idea. You need to remember that it is just a mindset that we have to keep behind in our minds when we're writing bullets. The A stands for accuracy, the B stands for brevity, and the S stands for specificity. So accuracy, we want to avoid exaggerations and embellishments for ourselves or our members. When we're trying to be accurate, we're trying to make sure we tell the truth 100% of the time. You think about the fact that these records are going to be permanent, you definitely want to make sure that you're being as accurate as possible. Our bullets are limited in length, so you definitely want to be brief and clear with your statements. Again, there is the possibility that you can write a 2-part bullet or even a 3-part bullet, but quite honestly, those are almost rarely used in practice. So anything that can confuse our reader, confusing words or phrases, try to avoid it at all costs. Those long acronyms or specific words to your job that don't really necessarily expand past your local unit should be avoided at all costs. Last, we have specificity. We want to make sure that we stay away from generalization. It kind of falls in line with accuracy in the sense that we want to make sure that we're always providing truthful, valid data, and we never inflate that data. Again, these are permanent records, and we want to make them as accurate as possible. Now that we're familiar with the TOS concept and the ABS concept, we're going to practice those basic skills by going through the basic parts of a bullet, and hopefully we'll get an idea of what we're doing here. Remember, the ABS concept and the TOS concept are simply just concepts, and you're gonna definitely see them here as we write our first bullet. So we've already discussed what needs to happen before we write a bullet. We talked about gathering all the data, getting all the facts, start thinking about the ABS concept and the TOS concept. The first step then is pretty simple. We want to get the action. We want to clearly describe the individual's specific contribution, and while we're doing so, we want to try to capture the level of performance that the member has been doing. I'm going to use a scheduler that schedules AWACS sorties as an example for this, and her involvement with counter-drop operations, where she was able to schedule tanker support for the AWACS. This member secured sorties for us, basically contacting different agencies that provided tanker support, and basically looking at a calendar, fitting in that calendar with our mission needs, and ultimately allowing our aircraft to be refueled. So I like the word that I just used, secured, because it really is a powerful statement when it comes to, in this case, scheduling. Securing, in this case, I'm using the word secured because she was able to negotiate the terms with these units and then, more importantly, guarantee that that support would be there. Remember what we're talking about being specific and avoiding embellishments or untruthful data? Well, keeping a tally of the number of sorties that were happening during that quarterly event is super important. And so in this case, the member was able to secure 66 tankers for us. Now, remember we talked about being descriptive and basically trying to give the reader an idea of what we're talking about? Well, this member was securing drug support, counter-drug support tankers. Now, this is a pretty simple statement. It's the action. And we basically broke down what she did. She secured the sorties, or you can always say negotiated or scheduled. In my case, I went with secured. A specific number, and basically what it was for. This is a pretty good action statement that can be used for this bullet. The next thing my member did was give me an idea of what exactly was that her actions were able to support. I also, as a good supervisor, like to know what my airmen are doing, and so I try to capture at least once every month a holistic picture of what we do as a team. And so when we write the impact, which is the next part of a bullet, the impact, we're going to try to tie the action with what the result is, or what the influence of that action yielded to. In other words, at what level was the immediate result of the member's actions. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the bullet here. We're going to push on with this bullet. So it turns out that we were able to contact the tanker units, and we have to actually keep a log of how many pounds of fuel we get and we transfer to our aircraft. And believe it or not, we were able to successfully receive 5.9 million pounds of fuel, which were used for a total of 33 missions, allowing the AWACS to control 362 hours. More importantly, she didn't really do this, but she was able to synchronize this. That's my son in the background. Gotta love my my support. And as you can see, now we're tying the immediate impact of her action. So securing 66 counter dry drop support tankers, might have missed the S there, which in turn synchronized roughly 5.1 million pounds of fuel for delivery, 33 missions, and 362 command and control hours. Now that I have an idea of the immediate action and the immediate impact of the member's actions, I need to figure out at what level this member's actions were able to impact, whether it's tactical, operational, strategic. And so in order for me to figure this out, I need to really figure out what exactly is the customer here. Who exactly is benefiting from all of this effort? We know that she's part of the team. We know that her effort, or her part of the team, is to secure the tanker support. And we know that by doing that, we get fuel transferred to aircraft, which in turn allow our aircraft to perform the missions. But who ultimately benefited from this? Well, we understand that in this case, our customer was Southern Command. And we also understand that it is JITF South, which stands for Joint Interagency Task Force South. So the word right there on the customer itself almost allows us to figure out that this is a joint impact or a joint result. Now, when I'm doing this, I need to start thinking about what the result is going to be measured as, or what is the contribution. And so I can clearly tell that there is some kind of joint impact to this, but more importantly, what ended up happening at the end? Well, it turns out that by keeping close contact with our customer, I was able to understand that our actions over the course of that period of time yielded an approximate $936 million worth of narcotics being apprehended or seized. And so I'm going to go with something simple. Again, I want to keep it simple. So we're going to go with seizures. All right, it's a joint effort, but more importantly, it's a success, right? It's a success story. We can go with joint operational effectiveness. You can go many ways with this, but again, we're running out of space, right? So I'm going to trying to keep it brief. And one of the words that I love putting, especially for airman packages, is basically enabling. And the reason why I use enabled is because the member wasn't directly the one that did the drug seizures, but her actions at the beginning helped the team enable that. And so I'm going to definitely right here put maybe success. And bada bing bada boom. Now my bullet went a little bit past, and that's fine because again, this is my first draft. Later on, as remember we were saying the getting ready, right? We're going to edit, and we're going to again figure out different verbiages, different things that we can put in to make the bullet fit. And I think just for me, and for the sake of expediency, I'm going to change the word success to something a little bit different. I think I'm going to go with maybe something that'll fit a little bit better. There we go. Enable joint effect. Now this is again my first draft of a bullet, but I'm sure it will probably not look the same, once I do my editing. But it stands true that we we're able to apply the concepts here. So tactical level, TOS, operational level, and strategic level. So this bullet captures 3 very well. Not all the time will you be able to see this, but in this case, we're able to successfully capture that. And were we able to keep ABS? Are we being accurate? Securing 66 counter-drop support tankers. That's pretty accurate. Synchronizing all of this. I think it's pretty accurate. More importantly, these numbers are valid and true. And I think it's specific. So again, this is an example of how we keep our TOS and ABS concept into the action, impact, and result, which are the 3 basic parts of a bullet. So I hope we're having some fun. We just finished our first bullets, and we were able to associate the 3 parts of a bullet, the action, impact, result, with the tactical, operational, and strategic concepts. And we were able to ensure that we were keeping ourselves true to the ABS concept, accurate, brief, and specific. Now we're going to cover the levels of leadership, or should I say the performance levels. This is very tricky, so I hope I'll do a good job at explaining it to you guys. Whenever we're writing bullets, or let's say you're a board member and you're grading bullets, you need to understand that everybody has an expectation levied upon him or her. Everybody has their job and the requirements. But that does not mean that the person doing the job isn't going to excel at the job, whether it's at the membership level or the leadership level. And so I want to make sure that we completely differentiate the term performance with performance levels. Performance is strictly associated with the expectation. What is the member's job? JOB. Performance level is at what level is the member's actions influencing? Is it at the lowest level, the membership level, or is it at the highest level, the leadership level? And so we're going to spend a little bit of time doing this because it's very important that we understand this as we write bullets to be able to communicate and articulate the proper message as we are submitting our awards, decorations, and evaluations. And so first off, the membership level typically is defined as the level of the apprentice or the journeyman at the junior ranks. The supervisory level is defined more on the journeyman, the supervisor, and the NCO. The management level is that it's expected more of a craftsman or a senior NCO. And then the leadership level, which is kind of difficult contextually, it really stands about the level of contribution that anyone can perform that is clearly above the expectations, whether it's tactical, operational, strategic in nature. They correlate with the development of the airman, and they need to reflect the level commensurate with the rank, but more importantly, the accomplishment, meaning you can have a member at the tactical level performing membership level duties whose actions at one point can influence or impact strategic levels, clearly defining leadership. And again, anybody can demonstrate leadership, and that's why it's key that we are very adamant about getting all the data and figuring out how that data correlates to the impact and the result. And so our first level is the membership level. And typically, again, like we were discussing just a minute ago, this is more towards the tactical level. It's more about job performance and your primary duties. And whenever you see bullets at this level, membership level, typically you'll see more like assisted, maybe supported, which is a very commonly used one, participated. I cannot type today. Or even volunteered. Now, these are all great things, right? Assisting, supporting, and participating, they're all great things. It doesn't necessarily mean that the member is doing anything bad. It simply just means that he is doing things more of a simplistic in nature. For example, when I am reviewing an awards package at the airman category, and I see an airman that is working on his CSAF degree, and he got, a certain amount of credits. You know what? That's great, and that should be captured because, again, that airman is exceeding the basic expectation. He is knocking out some schoolwork. He's developing his expertise. But if I were to see a package, and I see an airman who's finalizing his doctorate or just completed his doctorate, and he is now writing a thesis that is going to support society in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, strategic level, right? I can't score this airman the same way I would score this airman. And so on a scale of 0 to 2, my CCF credit airman would probably get like a 0.5 or maybe a 1, right? But then my doctorate airman would probably get a full 2 points. Again, because this is indicating that this member is leading. Even though he is at the tactical level, he's not performing at a membership level. Or at least in this bullet, he wouldn't be. He would be performing at the leadership level. And some of the results or impacts that we can see are more unit-based, more like shop-based, maybe flight level, more immediate level impacts, things that are more aligned with the, again, tactical level of performance. The result typically would stretch probably as far as maybe a unit or maybe as some kind of distinction, basic level, like maybe getting a commander's coin or getting a lot of appreciation or something along the lines that is, again, falling on the tactical level. In essence, membership levels are typically things that are part of the building blocks to a bigger accomplishment. We're basically saying this member is in the trajectory, but he still needs some work. He's still, at the beginning stages. At this particular situation, whenever you see a bullet that's at the membership level, also levy that against the expectation. I cannot have, and I hate to say this and I don't mean disrespect, but I cannot grade a master sergeant who's working on a doctorate's degree the same as a master sergeant with CCF credit. I would say a master sergeant with CCF credits in a awards package would get a score of 0.5 at the most versus maybe a master sergeant with a doctorate. Now, looking at expectations duty-wise, I would say you would need to definitely understand what the job, responsibility, and the scope of the person is. Really key word, scope. The scope of duties will allow you also to understand at what level this person is performing. Again, performance levels. Our next level is going to be the supervisory level. And the supervisory level is tactical or operational in nature. It basically depicts more actions that are normally accomplished by NCOs or journeymen. When we look at supervisory level, again, tactical in nature or operational, and we're going to see things like supervised, oversaw, like overseeing, leading, mentoring, 1 or 2, small scale. These are keywords to describe actions under the supervisory role. When it comes to education, for example, now we're looking at maybe completion of CCF, maybe already been awarded CCF. When we're looking at primary duties, we're looking at, again, supervising, overseeing, leading, and mentoring. And when we think about the impacts that a person has at the supervisory level, we're talking base or community. Because now we're broadening the scope of influence. Notice how even though this person could or could not, depending, could be working on a tactical level, his or her actions now need to be past the flight level, need to be past the small team level. We're looking at a larger scale. Sometimes, large unit as well, could apply supervisory as well. And again, supervision of small groups, small teams, is typically what you're going to see at the supervisory level. And when we're talking about the results of a member in the supervisory level, in the military, Air Force, we could see something along the lines of group. We could see wing level impacts. Very rarely a person in the supervisory level performance will have an Air Force-wide impact. Again, if you have a person that did something amazing, but you can only think about a result that spans to the group or wing, then you either need to dig some more and find out if the action actually clearly impacted well beyond that, or you just have to be honest, right, and basically capture where the member is at. Our next level is going to be the management level. And the management level is definitely more operational. In the management level, when it comes to expectations, we're looking at senior NCOs. We're looking at job performance that includes leading multiple teams or multiple programs. I just wrote programs in Spanish. See, I'm bilingual like that. At the management level, we're looking at persons that are able to mentor large groups or installations. Or we're looking at a person with a broader perspective. Notice how we're going from like the lowest level again to the highest level. When you look at impacts that are at the management level, typically, again, using the reference of job expectation, you're going to see more senior NCOs performing at the management level. We're definitely looking for wing, sometimes group, but typically you want to see something that's wing, numbered Air Force, so Air Force level, MASHCOM. Or if we're looking at outside entities, larger in scope. So in this case, if I were to use, for example, Habitat for Humanity, I would definitely have this person leading teams for Habitat for Humanity and managing geographical areas for Habitat for Humanity as an example. And the result that we'll see from these people are broad in nature. We're talking things that you may not even see the result until maybe 3 or 4 years. We're going to see results that are definitely Air Force level, maybe DoD level. And so sometimes these are really hard to capture. I highly recommend that you definitely take your time when you're writing these, because at this point when you're talking management level, sometimes it really pays dividends to study missions, objectives, strategy for all of our leadership, from the lowest level to the highest level. And the reason why I say that is because our own leaders right now have all these strategies, but they can only picture what they want to see in the future. But how we get there and when we get there is really just hypothetical, right? Because again, this is all strategic in nature. And so these are, again, things that we can expect to see in somebody at the management level. And last but not least, at the management level, we really need to think about the fact that if the person is levied, or let me rephrase, if the person is tasked, if their whole expectation, if their job, their job is to work at the management level, then maybe the result can fall short. And so you can do these great things, but if those great things that you're doing are simply your job expectations, then you're going to fall at the membership level. So it's really hard to capture exceeding performance whenever you're trying to write a management level bullet. And so last but not least, we're going to cover the leadership level. The leadership level. The leadership level is not really tied to any rank or any particular duty. Anybody can achieve or perform at the leadership level. And that's why I said at the beginning, do not associate the performance levels with performance in itself. Now, generally speaking, leadership level performance usually depicts strategic involvement, things that are expected from a leader. However, anyone working at any level has the potential to perform at the leadership level. Some of the things that we think about here is the scope, for sure. You definitely want to look at the scope of duties and expectations of the member, because if the member's actions are way above and beyond their duties and expectations, and their scope of influence stretches past greater levels, strategic levels, then it's worth capturing. And so some of the verbiages that you may see is obviously organizing, leading teams, or planning. Planning is a really big one, because again, when we're at the strategic level, we're planning for future. Sometimes we may not even be able to measure the results. When we talk about leadership level, from an airman perspective, we might see things like, no kidding, organized is a good one, an event. You may be able to see things like mentored teams. And so even though we're talking about an airman that works at the tactical level, his actions may impact at the leadership level. When we see an NCO, again, organize events, in this case, not just one event, but multiple events, mentored or supported, I wouldn't say supported, or led, like Network 56 events. Things of that nature clearly stand out the leadership level. Now, here's the tricky part. You need to measure the scope versus the results. And the reason why you want to do that is because, again, you can have an airman working at the tactical level. His scope is limited, but the results of his actions could far exceed any of these three other levels, and clearly jump into the leadership level. Again, levels of higher level, achieving higher levels of education, organizing base, community, or higher level events is impacting things that are impacting hundreds of airmen. This is the kind of scope that we're looking for when we're talking about leadership. And again, to summarize, the leadership levels are not commensurate with actual performance. Performance levels, or I say leadership levels, performance levels are directly tied to the influence of the members' actions, whether it's tactical, operational, strategic in nature, and the influence that those actions have at the different levels and scope. So now it's time to discuss some of the traps. Traps are always something that will catch us off guard. As a board member, you need to be an expert at identifying these traps because you definitely don't want to give credit where credit is not due. We want to be able to make sure that we're fairly assessing these bullets whenever we're providing a score, and so that when we select the winner of an award package or the next person to promote, we are actually doing a due diligence. And here is a list, but honestly not all inclusive, of all of the traps that we tend to fall into when we're writing bullets, and some of the traps that you will see whenever you become a board member. Everything we have discussed leads up to this point. We're going to start applying the TOS concept, the ABS concept, and the performance levels as we grade and we look at these traps. Tying it all together. The table that you see here is taken again from Chief Jaren's The Magic of Bullet Writing book, which is a phenomenal resource. I highly recommend anybody to get a copy or digital. It's available on the Air Force Air University. And so as you can see, we have the three parts of the bullet: the action, the impact, and the result. And then on the left-hand side, we have the levels of performance, and a little section down here for fluff. I'm sure at this point many of you know what fluff is. It's basically bullet information that provides no important facts or does not substantiate anything in the bullet. It basically serves no purpose. And so as we go through these traps, we're going to grade the action, impact, result. We're going to try to assess at what leadership or performance level it's going to be at to ultimately come up with maybe a score of 0 to 2. Let's look at our first bullet here. This is from an A1C surveillance technician, basically an E3 surveillance technician. And this trap is called making promises. I like to call it cashing in checks but have no funds. The bullet reads, amazing scholar attending 2 college courses towards Bachelor's of Management Leadership. Held 4.0 GPA. Postured for future commission? Postured for future commission. What is wrong with this bullet? Well, let's take a quick look. This bullet doesn't really conform necessarily to the action impact result technique that we've discussed. It uses a different technique that I like to call the attention grabber, or what is he or what did he do, and then how did he do it. It's usually used to grab the reader's attention, but in this case, it's really not being used effectively. So if we look at the action part of this bullet, which is just calls Amazing Scholar, it falls definitely flat on the fluff category. Attending is not used in bullet writing. We use past tense. We never use future or present tense. And Amazing Scholar isn't really telling us anything that isn't already being told by the data of his GPA, his or her GPA. Last but not least, I like to say that this impact falls more on the tactical level, because 2 college courses is, for an A1C, it's not bad. I would say it's a good. I would almost dare to say maybe for an A1C, it's not on the membership level. It's more supervisory in nature, and it's definitely a tactical level accomplishment. And I think the result is just, again, garbage. Falls flat. Fluff. Never make promises when you write bullet statements. Our next bullet is from a senior admin administrator, an admin troop. It says here, AEF Warrior. Wow, Warrior. Completed 12 CBTs, 160 training hours, achieved 100% readiness, filled critical role for Squadron's 8 deployment crews. Let that sink in for a minute. And this bullet is called faulty lead in. And a faulty lead in basically just means that the writer is trying to hype up the bullet at the beginning, but then come to realize the member or the performance is just that of what is expected of the member. In this case, he is required to finish his CVTs, he complete those hours, and he's required to be 100% ready for deployment. And more importantly, how is an admin troop? Again, we're looking about measuring or understanding the scope of responsibilities. How is he filling a critical role for 8 deployment crews? Doesn't really define that in this bullet. So when we look at it, in my opinion, it falls very short, and I would probably score this no more than a 0.5 out of 2. The action, again, this is a almost a one of those attention grabber bullets. Falls flat. It's definitely fluff. The impact is, it's okay. It's definitely a membership level, and it's definitely at the tactical level, so I would probably put it right there. And the result, even though we initially went with operational, I honestly, it's hard to see anything more than a membership level to an operational effect. Again, I wouldn't score this any higher than like a 0.5. But again, it's because we are looking at the expectation of the member, and that matters. Our next trap is one that I see often, and it's called the lead effort trap. In this case, we're going with a captain, weapons officer. Weapons officers in AOX community control aircraft and basically have a really important role in the aircraft. But in this particular case, this captain is not necessarily fulfilling that role. It's more of a, looks like a leadership type of bullet. It says here that he led the squadron's first innovation team. Okay, that's not a bad start. It could fall into a misleading introduction, but we're going to see. Solidified energy, or correction, synergy, improved efficiency of what? Contributed to the unit's Air Force Vern Orr Award. Okay, that's a big plus for me, but how? Those are critical questions that you need to be asking. When you write bullets like this, where we forget what we talked about initially at the beginning of this training, keyword, data, Another keyword, impact. And another keyword, relation to all of those things, right? If we don't see that, then this bullet, in my opinion, doesn't really go too far. We're off to a good start, even though I think going with the tactical level is probably incorrect again because we are leading and we're leading a team. And as we discussed before in the performance levels, that is another type of operational action. And the management level, I think this is granting maybe a little bit tomorrow. I'll almost say that falls under supervisory level because it's only one team. The impact, definitely fluff. In my opinion, it's not even tactical level. It's just pure old fluff. So I wouldn't even go with that. Yeah, for fluff. And result, okay. It's definitely Air Force level, so we're gonna go with strategic. But the fact that there's like nothing supporting this, it kind of falls from what it could have been a leadership level result to simply a supervisory result. What if all he did was change a small thing? I mean, we don't know. There's like no data to back up this. And so if I were to score this bullet, honestly, again, this bullet falls really short. I would give it a 0.5. I often find people boosting about their job title, and sometimes we see that reflected in bullet writing. Our next trap is called the job title trap. And in this case, we're using a tech sergeant surveillance technician. It starts with the title, Network 56 President. Led actions critical to base junior NCO team success. Exemplified leadership. Inspired a spirit of corps. Okay, so my first question here is, what actions did you lead? What kind of success are we talking about? Do you run any projects? Did we do anything? I mean, or were you just leading actions? It's very vague. And let's look at this result. It really falls short. It really does. And so when we look at this, guess what? Being the president of the Network 56 is a big deal. So clearly this person as a tech sergeant is performing at the leadership level because he's leading teams. But this bullet action falls short, in my opinion, as fluff, but not because the statement itself is fluff. It's because all of the other information that supports that statement is not there. And so when we go into the next section, our impact, we start seeing that even though it's operational in nature, what he's doing, because we're looking at a base level, team success, there's no data measuring it to support those statements, and therefore it becomes fluff on our performance level scale. Last but not least, we have our result. In this case, again, exemplified leadership. What does leadership have to do with actions critical to base team success? Spirit of corps. How did he prove that his actions led to spirit of corps? And again, it's another statement that falls flat. And we're looking at inspiring a spirit of corps. We're looking at leadership, which may be maybe operational level, but it's still fluff. So if I were to see this bullet, maybe no more than a 1, simply because being a president is important. But this could have easily been a 2 bullet. Not anymore. All right, our next one, the death trap bullet. Man, this one, I see the result on this one. It looks extraordinary. I mean, benchmarking 7 wing safety program best practice. That really caught my attention off the bat. But what's going on the beginning of this bullet? Let's see. Squadron Safety OIC. Okay, duty title. Oh boy, we're falling again for that. Duty title. How are we backing that up? Okay, well, let's see. Briefed all squadron personnel completed 100% work center inspections. And so the death trap bullet is usually highlighted when we have an amazing result, but the actions behind that result don't really connect to that result. Because if you think about this, briefing all squadron personnel is a safety OIC responsibility. Completing 100% work center inspections is, in my opinion, a standard that is levied upon this individual. And so, how are any of these two statements tied to benchmarking 7 wing safety programs? I don't even see 7 inspections in here. I don't even see 7 of anything to be able to claim that. And so we need to be careful because we talked about ABS, accuracy, brevity, and specificity. This bullet is not really accurate because we're going with that percentage, which who knows? Is it true? Is it not? Okay, I'll give you the brevity part to some degree, but it's not really specific, especially when it comes to connecting the impact with the result. And so when we look at this bullet, really, we see a management, really more like a supervisory type of duty title here in the action. And honestly, because it's not substantiated by any impacts or results, it really falls, in my opinion, as fluff. Then we have the impact, which it's not necessarily a bad impact, but the problem is that the impact doesn't associate itself with the result. So again, and it's also the expectation, it's the standard that it's set up on him. It's not like he's exceeding the standard or anything like that. So falls short at tactical level, in my opinion, even though his duty title is that of a safety OIC and he is a captain, it's still a membership level impact. The result looked amazing. It's clearly leadership and it's clearly an operational impact. Impacting 7 safety programs at the wing is amazing. But if I were to score this bullet, I'm sorry, but it wouldn't be more than a 1. And to be honest, I probably would go more for a 0.5. It's a captain we're talking about. Again, levy that duty title, that's responsibility, the scope of his duties with the result. There's no clear association between them. So that's what the death trap is all about. I tend to see this next trap often as well. It's called the lazy writing trap. And so in this case, we have a captain assistant director of operations, which in AWACS is normally a major. And so in this bullet, it says CPI minded. What is CPI? Hopefully everybody knows it's continuous process improvement. Analyze flight scheduling ops. Established newer improved booking process. See that? That's a distractor right there. Enhanced squadron sortie generation by what number? How much? And so lazy writing in itself is basically when the member lacks specificity. It's when the member lacks accuracy, and those things become distractors. It's also when you start seeing use of acronyms that may not necessarily be recognized by other readers. And so we want to definitely avoid this trap. I don't know how much we're not be able to measure it. So again, what is up with the data? So if I was going to rate this bullet, honestly, I mean, we're talking about a major here. All right. Normally performing at the management level, but his initial statement, CPI minded, really talks about something that is combining skill sets, which I'm okay with that. That's a supervisory level, not necessarily a membership level. But he's doing things that are more on the tactical slash operational level. So I would say I'm in the fence on those two. Then let's look at analyze flight scheduling ops, the impact. The impact itself is more of an action. It doesn't have a impact. It just says he analyzed, right? So I would have gone with maybe delivered. That's more of an impact measured type of action verb. Delivered, maybe flight scheduling ops. So let's put that. Established. I don't even know what this is. It's supposed to be hyphen hyphen normally. Established new or improved booking process, which then enhances squadron story generation. What does this have to do with flight scheduling? Booking? Scheduling? You see where I'm going with this? The data and the bullet information is so vague and so lazy that it really detracts from the reality of this bullet. I would dare to say that analyzing or delivering scheduled ops for a major definitely falls at a membership level because a major shouldn't be doing something like that. I think that they work at a higher capacity. In the supervisory role for the result, I think I agree with. It's no more than a supervisory role because it is impacting the sortie generation. But to be honest, it's so vague that I would almost not even call it any type of operation. I'll just call it fluff. Hopefully, we avoid this lazy writing. It is a common trap, especially when you don't have the data. You just make up stuff, and that's never good. All right, my favorite one, the too many acronyms trap. A senior airman air radar technician. Look at this. Squadrons art, like art painting art. SME subject. I know that's for subject matter expert. T and M'd rudder sys HNW Malf Latu. What? Oh my god. Returned E3G FMC F/RW mission ISO AOR ATO. Okay, I will read this bullet out loud, but it is something that I often see on my junior NCOs, the too many acronyms. They just want to squeeze all this stuff into a bullet, and they forget about brevity, right? This is where we start losing our brevity, all right? Squadrons Art Subject Matter Expert. All right, here we go. Another duty title slash faulty lead-in bullet here. Troubleshoot and maintain radar system hardware malfunction. Let to, oh my god, let to, the number 2 should be let to, and it should be led to 400,000 high voltage transmitter removal and replacement. Return E3G Golf to FMC status for real world mission in support of AOR ATO. Oh my god. Man, if I was a board member and I was an art, which I was by the way, for the record, I would be like, yeah, phenomenal bullet for a senior airman. Yeah, phenomenal bullet. I would almost say, you know what? That's leadership right there. Troubleshooting system malfunction and returning $400,000 back to FMC status. That's great. But because most board members are not air radar technicians, boom. And because all these acronyms are confusing it, I would almost go down here. And then we look at the impact. It looks great. I see a $400,000 figure here and everything, but again, if I don't know what the acronyms mean, I will clearly go from what could have been a good management level, supervisory level bullet down to membership bullet. And again, tactical. There's data to measure, and so you can definitely get something out of that, but not much. Last but not least, the result really was at the strategic almost level, more operational, but it was borderline between the two, operational slash strategic. But again, we're distracting our reader with so much that he won't be able to convey this, an area of responsibility, the air tasking order. He won't be able to convey this. And so what could be a management level impact or result for this airman now turns into a membership bullet. And honestly, if I was an air radar technician, I would probably score this bullet at a 1.5. But Most board members are not, and so I fear that a bullet like this may turn into a zero point 0.5 bullet. Let's not fall for the too many acronyms trap. Chief Jaren calls this trap the bridge too far trap. Where I come from, we call this trap speeding. And it happens quite often. And this is, I think, one of the biggest bullets you need to be careful with, especially when you're reading materials from experienced bullet writers. They will be able to put a blindfold and you won't be able to recognize it until it may be too late. Let's look at this bullet. This is from a staff sergeant that is a computer technician. Repaired aircraft computer system failure in flight. Great. That's actually really good. We started off with a verb. We were specific. And we were able even to describe everything very briefly. So we kept our B concept here. But all of a sudden we start stretching the truth here a little bit. And this is where accuracy starts going down the drain. Sustained serviceable $2 billion E3G fleet. You know what? It's fair to say that some of his actions can impact the sustainability of the fleet. But the way this sounds makes it sound like the member sustained the entire fleet because of his actions. And that is inaccurate. Dot, dot, dot. And then we're going to take this even to the next level, which enabled 1,000 strikes against Daesh targets. Man, I would say if he repaired the computer system 100 times, right? Talk about the data, right? And being accurate and specific. I would almost believe if he repaired the computer 100 times, let's say he flew 100 sorties and each sortie the computer system malfunctioned and he had to fix it. And we were able to get 100 strikes, or sorry, 10 strikes. Guess what? I would believe that bullet. But this is definitely speeding, and when it comes to a bullet like this, I'm a stickler for. And so I would say the action would not fall as fluff. It is definitely a member tactical level action. Maybe if we would have added the 100 times or whatever number of times, maybe adding expertise to it would bump it to supervisory, very weak supervisory level. But when we look at the impact, it's almost a operational, I wouldn't say strategic, but I would say it's almost operational in nature. A fleet, 30, I think 31 AWACSs or so, something like that. Um, but it's not accurate. It doesn't really tie directly to the action, and so I go and call that fluff. Doesn't add really to it. And then the result, oh man, let's not even get with that. Sure, it's strategic in nature. They each targets, but did he really in one repair maybe or maybe a few in flight? Looks like it was a single occurrence. Did that really lead to 1,000 strikes? We're calling it speeding, and therefore I think it's fluff as well. And therefore, um, I won't lie, a bullet like this would probably score 0.5 in my book. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's speeding. Bridge too far. Don't fall for that trap. I see this all the time. You speed read through these bullets as a board member, and you see this, and you're like, "Oh my God, this airman is walking on gold." But you really have to again look at the member, look at the expectation, levy that against the actual action, compare it to the data, and associate it to the impact and the result, and you will clearly see that this is simply not a true statement. Very similar to our too many acronyms trap, we have the what Chief Jaren calls the know your audience trap. And it's true whenever you write Again, we discussed that we need to be able to be familiar with what is the criteria for the award and if we are able to meet or exceed those expectations levied upon us, at all levels. And so knowing your audience is very important. Here we go. We have an A1C, surveillance technician. Awarded FNP license. Concluded 4-year program in 3 years with 4.0 GPA. Nice. Aced NECP requirements. Fulfilled Air Force medical personnel shortage. I see all kinds of issues with this. First off, we are talking about a surveillance technician. We're not talking about a medical technician, right? And so for those of you that don't know, FMP, I think it stands for, is for family nurse practitioner. And I think NECP is nurse enlisted commissioning program. So just so we all are clear on that, let's figure this out. So this airman is currently conducting the role of a surveillance technician. Congrats, he was awarded his family nurse practitioner license. I didn't know that because I'm in the military. I'm a board member that doesn't know anything about nursing. I'm a board member that knows AWACS, command and control. But here's the other thing too about this bullet is I I don't know if this member is really fulfilling medical personnel shortage because it doesn't say anywhere in this bullet that this member transitioned over to become an enlisted nurse or a commissioned nurse with the Air Force. I don't see any of that. And so we need to be careful. We need to know our audience. And in this case, also make sure that we're able to articulate accurate, brief, and specific information. All right, let's look at how this bullet stands out. Guess what? I truly believe that an A1C that was awarded a family nurse practitioner license is performing at the leadership level. Hands down, definitely agree with that. I would say that being awarded the license demonstrates more, not just tactical level, but in this case, more operational. And so I definitely fall this under the leadership. When we look at the impact, concluded 4-year program in 3 years, that's basically exceeding standards. And then amazing scholar, right, with 4.0 GPA. So I almost dare to say that for an A1C, that's leadership and that's operational. Acing the requirements, again, falls in that leadership. I don't think that fulfilled Air Force medical personnel shortage is accurate. That's a promise. Remember, we talked about promises at the beginning, and that just, in my opinion, falls as fluff. And then once this happens, once we see this and we realize it's not accurate, it starts making us question everything else. Especially if I don't know anything about this, which a good board member will ask the question, what's FMP? I may start looking at doing this. And so what could have been a 2 may now become a 1.5 or maybe even a 1 to other board members, depending on what they're looking at. And so be careful. Know your audience. Don't fall for that trap. We're almost done with the list, which again is not all inclusive. Our next trap here is the lackluster trap. Chief Jaren refers it as who's your audience or lackluster. I do believe on the lackluster part. And this is one of my favorite types of bullets to talk about because this is the type of bullet that I see often. Really good bullet, really good accomplishments. I read the bullet for what it is, but it's missing the element that gives it that little spark. Okay? And so we're going to look at this. So this is a senior airman, CDMT, which is a computer display maintenance technician. And so it says here that he completed 2 management courses and then he was awarded 6 CCF credit hours, finished comp science degree requirements, Dean's List with 4.0 GPA. To the untrained eye, this bullet looks pretty cool, looks pretty awesome, but guarantee you a person that isn't necessarily paying attention or has multiple award packages to review may miss the important stuff. And you can see this bullet being initially graded to like a 1, maybe 1.5. We'll give them that. But as you start looking deeper into this bullet, they really kind of emphasize this by taking so much space. Again, brevity. We're not seeing as much brevity here. And then this kind of like, it takes away from the attention of the more important thing. This member completed a science degree, meaning he's done. And honestly, like finish comp science degree requirements, I don't know. And then as a result, at the highest level, he's saying that he's in the dean's list with 4.0 GPA when he clearly has already finished. And so this result should be the part of the impact, and then this statement here should be the end result. And so a phenomenal accomplishment that a member just did has been washed away. Look at this beginning part. We talked about basically inflating statements. In this case, we're deflating this bullet. Completed 2 management courses. I would have, honestly, I would have done a reverse part bullet here, which I haven't talked much about because, again, they're those that are made to catch your eye. But I would have definitely started this bullet with completed computer science degree, dash, dash. Awarded 6, I don't even put the awarded 6 CCF credit hours. I would say, who cares about the CCF at this point when the member is getting a computer science degree, which is going to position him for a possible commission? So let's see how this bullet stands out here on this list here. Looks like we are, I wouldn't even use this, to be honest, because it's almost a little confusing. But completed 2 management courses for a senior airman, it's definitely above the membership level. And he's a senior airman, so it's definitely within line of the tactical level. And then his impact and the bullet itself is, again, tactical level, supervisory level in nature. And the result, I do not concur with that. This result falls short, in my opinion. That, to me, falls down here. Okay, maybe here. Maybe a little supervisory level. But honestly, yeah, that bullet would probably read as a 1.5 bullet when clearly what the member actually did would put him at a 2. And so we must be careful with lacking luster when we write our bullets. Always, always highlight the more important part of the bullet. Whether it's putting it at the beginning with the capital F here finished and then a big old asterisk at the end to celebrate it, or make sure that you make it somehow stand out and not get it washed out with all this other extra stuff that really takes away from the actual accomplishment. And finally, we have the Thesaurus Trap. Very commonly done. How many of you find yourselves filling in your bullet and just being a few characters shy of having the bullet fit in, and it just goes right over? I know it happens to me all the time. And so what ends up happening is we go to thesaurus.com or we go on Microsoft Word and we start looking for words that can fit in with smaller number of characters. And then what we end up doing is we start losing the true accuracy, the true value, and the true specificity of that action, impact, or result. No, don't do that. Always, always learn what I like to call the weight of the word. We're going to use, for example, college credit hours, like to basically have the easiest reference. We don't accumulate credit hours necessarily. We don't gain credit hours. We really earn credit hours, right? And even though when you go to thesaurus.com, these 3 words are going to show up as the same word, sometimes you might even see achieved or got or received. You start looking at the definitions: accumulated, gathered together, or acquire an increasing number of quantity, obtain or secured for gain. What about earn? Gain diversely in return for one's behavior or achievements. Look at that. And it's almost a few characters less, but it has such an impact on its true definition. All right? Think about the weight of the word before you fall into the Thesaurus Trap. I'm not going to go too much in depth on this one. We've all been a victim of the Thesaurus Trap before. So, again, remember, just because you ran out of space doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice the weight of a word. Think about other ways to go through it. Maybe you haven't been as accurate, or maybe you just need to figure out how you can be more brief, or maybe you're being sometimes too specific. These things will definitely start impacting your space. Don't fall for that trap. Now we're going to cover enlisted performance reports. There are two forms that we use for enlisted performance reports. We have the Air Force Form 910 and the Air Force Form 911. In this case, we're going to go with the Air Force Form 911, which is the senior NCO version. It applies to ranks from Master Sergeant through Chief Master Sergeant. Air Force Form 910 applies for senior airmen all the way to Tech Sergeant. It used to apply to Airman Basic through Tech Sergeant, but with the changes from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Goldfing, and Chief Master Sergeant Kalitho Wright, we now start EPRs at the rank of Senior Airman. The only difference between the two forms, major differences, is that the Senior Raider version will have a push statement line, which will also come with a stratification block that the Senior Raider will be able to select if the member is on his top 10. And that's pretty much the major differences between the two. The Air Force Form 910 will have, instead of this, it will have a promotion advantage statement, which will break or give the member an advantage or a disadvantage. It'll have a do not promote, a not ready now, a promote, a must promote, or a promote now. Each one of these statements will give the member a specific point advantage in the promotion cycle. So let's go to the top, and we're going to cover just section 1 really quick on this one. It's pretty self-explanatory for the most part, but there's a couple of places where you might make mistakes here. Obviously, last name, first name, middle initial, social, the rank. Here's a section where many people sometimes make the mistake. You need to make sure that you know what the actual duty AFSC for the member is. We have primary AFSCs, control AFSCs, and duty AFSCs. And just because somebody has a primary AFSC of 1A371 does not mean that the member is not performing duties under the unit manning document as a Kilo 1 Alpha 371, which is an acronym for instructor. Or not an acronym, should I say, but a letter or designator. We also have Q for evaluator and T for schoolhouse instructor or AATC instructor. We have the rating period here, and this will be basically impacted by what the reason for the report is. So if the report is supposed to be annual, then the period will encompass a full year. And as of a couple of years ago, our Master Sergeants will have a static closeout date, also known as the SCOD, of 30 September of of whatever year that is. You should never have any breaks in rating, so make sure that you verify this, but again, it should be 0 for days non-rated. And days of supervision, again, if you're doing a biennial, then it'll be 364 days times 2. That'll equal to, I have no idea, I'm not a huge math specialist, but I think it's like 720. And so you'll put that number there accordingly. You can have annual reports, which in this case, if I'm not mistaken from what I've learned, you could have the option to do an EPR every year. Most of the time, if you see directed by the commander, HAF, or NGB, it's usually not for good reasons. Change your rater, we don't see this one as often anymore. As a matter of fact, I think after we establish static closeout dates, I rarely ever see one of these. And then you have your senior airmen's, which will have their initial EPR, and I'll say initial, which the reason why you want to do initial is because it doesn't encompass an annual or biannual. It could encompass up to 3 years if the airman has been in training for that long. And so if the airman took 3 years to promote to senior airman, according to the promotions AFI, This initial term here will be able to cover the entire period. Again, if you have any questions about this, always refer to the AFI 36-2406, Officer and Enlisted Evaluations. We will cover sections 2 and 3 on the next slide. And so I hope that you are able to put some time into studying and remembering some of the lessons that we've learned previously, because now a lot of what we've talked about is starting to come together. So remember what we were talking about whenever we were developing bullets and we were checking our data and categorizing the information, and we were linking the action and all of those things that we discussed, and then verify, edit, edit, edit. Well, this is one of those moments where it starts taking a role in enlisted evaluations. And that's because key duties are super important. You need to be able to really articulate these correctly. So again, key duties are supposed to describe the member's responsibilities. And then in these key duties, we also are able to define scope of duties. Again, very important. And these are going to be in bullet format as well, but the only difference is they don't have to be in past tense. They can be in present tense. And honestly, the more descriptive you can be and the more specific you can be about things, the better it's going to help whenever we start writing the performance at the sections 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So again, be descriptive. Provide data. And last but not least, make sure that you edit, edit, edit. You want to capture exactly what your members' responsibilities are. And if you can't, then we have a problem here. The other thing I would recommend is this bullet, primary duty. This bullet, scope of primary duty. This bullet, personnel or projects or programs. And then this bullet, anything additional duty related, so if the member has a secondary duty. However, I don't recommend this for senior NCOs. We are senior NCOs, right? We are jacks of all trades, masters of none. We lead teams. And so consider maybe this last bullet going with something on the same lines of these right here. There is no right or wrong answer here. There are very much better techniques of what I'm teaching you, so please always take the time, and there are a lot of really good mentors out there that are phenomenal when it comes to evaluations. Then we have section 3, and this is the first section where we start to capture performance. And again, when we're talking about linking the action and extracting those facts and capturing the tactical, operational, or strategic levels and being accurate, brief, and specific, this is where it all comes to play. Now, section 3, and so does every section at the front page of the EPR, will give you the criteria, believe it or not. So the Air Force is telling you what they expect you to put on this section. This is not the section, for example, to be putting bachelor's degree education bullets, right? That's where whole airman concept or followership go into play at the Air Force Form 910. So again, look at this. Consider the airman's ability to lead and produce timely, high quality, quantity, mission-oriented results. Resource realization, team building, communication skills, comply with or enforcing standards, duty environment, training, and I'm not going to read all of them for you, but you get the idea. You want to understand what this paragraph is telling you and asking for you, because that's the kind of information that you need to put in here. More importantly, you need to be able to prove that the member is performing at next level. And you do that by making sure that the statements you put here are exceeding the expectations over here. And I'll explain here. If in this section you put here that he maintains, I don't know, let's see, 7 programs and ensures readiness, right? And this is super vague, by the way. When you're capturing the performance here and you write maintained 7 programs ensured 100% readiness. Guess what? This member is working at the tactical level and membership level. But if you were to prove with data, validity, right, accurate, brief, and specific data that he improved 7 programs or restored readiness and prove it in a bullet, then now you're basically indicating that this member is exceeding those expectations levied upon him or her. These ratings here, the EPR will, there's a problem with the EPR form right now where if you don't mark these ratings, it'll lock the next sections in most cases. So go ahead and mark the ratings. Those will not be your final ratings. And make sure that, speaking of ratings, that you have had those feedbacks with your subordinate so that you know where your subordinate stands. And believe it or not, these markings need to correlate with what's in here. So if you say that everything he did was his job, I don't think you can put that he exceeded most, if not all, expectations. By all means, he met all expectations, but definitely not exceeding. But if most of his bullets, if not all, say that he's exceeding the expectations, go ahead and mark him all the way to the right. Again, section 3 deals with performance and leadership in your primary duties, fellowship, and training. But the principle for this one will also apply to section 4, which is your whole airman concept. And we will talk a little bit more about sections 7, 8, and 9. So here's a quick summary of what we talked about, but this is more applicable to the Air Force Form 910. The only difference here for section 3 is that instead of using the senior CO scope, it's using senior airman through tech sergeant scope, and it's basically the same thing: task knowledge, proficiency, initiative, motivation, skill level upgrade training, position requirements, qualifications, certifications, and then trainings of others, which is a little bit different in scope than that of the Air Force Form 911, and I figured I'd add this slide to make sure we kind of see the little comparison between the two. Now we're going to look at the back of the EPR. We're going to start with section 5, the overall performance assessment. This section is the overall assessment from the supervisor referring to the member's performance. It is not, I repeat, it is not an average of the sections 3 and 4, or 3, 4, and 5, depending if it's a Form 11 or a 410. It is, again, a overall assessment from the supervisor to the member. However, this assessment, whether it's here or here, needs to be substantiated by what's in here and what's in here. If you cannot substantiate your assessment here, we need to go back and edit, as we discussed before. This will be the section to put the supervisor's name. All you have to do here is put your name in full caps, your duty title, and doesn't have to be in full caps. It's the first letter is going to be caps, not the rest of the text. We'll put our social, and then the type of signature has to be digital. And the reason why is because it's not a referral report. If it were a referral report, it would have to be manual. If you see this block being absent, where you cannot sign the form, or if everything below this block as well is blanked out, you can't do anything to it, make sure that these are checked, and then make sure that you change this date to the date that you're in the calendar, current date. It's not supposed to be that way. It'll get changed the day that the EPR goes out for signatures. But for some reason, if this date is set to a future date, or any future date, what'll happen is it'll be blocked out. And so that's how you fix that. Guaranteed it'll happen. Every single form that I've seen and going through always has this problem. Now, the rater down here who has signed the report will also sometimes fill in additional rater comments, or the additional rater himself or herself will fill in these comments. And these comments are very important. This back section of your EPR will contain the strongest bullets. always, because these bullets are what I like to call your endorsement bullets. These are the bullets that says, here is why my subordinate is performing at the next grade, and here is why you should consider promoting that member. The additional rater will concur or not concur with these statements, and everything before that. If your additional rater doesn't concur with something, you need to be able to have that discussion and figure out why that happens before the evaluation closes. You should never see a non-concur in an evaluation from the additional rater. Then we have the senior rater, which will be the, in our case for senior NCOs, if I'm not mistaken, will be the first 06 in the chain of command according to the AFI. And so we'll put his or her name here. Duty title. Again, make sure that we're looking at digital signatures. And then this push statement right here for senior NCOs is basically the additional raters comments to the senior rater endorsing the member. Once more, the senior rater will then again concur or not concur with these statements in the evaluation, and you should never see a non-concur. Again, conversations have to happen before this button is clicked. I swear, if that conversation is happening, you see non-concur, man, something needs to be discussed. Then we have future roles for the member. Consider looking at the enlisted force structure. Consider looking at the career and training development plan, CFETB, career field training education plan for the member. Don't just put random stuff in here. Very important, very important. And then it should happen that the member and the supervisor had that discussion during their feedbacks, and the supervisor will weigh in on the strengths that the member brings to the fight and how future roles that the member can help the Air Force will be put in sequential order here. Then the last blocks are honestly very self-explanatory, but we're still going to cover them. So you have your CCF conferred for senior COs, PME complete for senior COs. Super important, because if you don't have these completed, you will not be stratified and you will not get promoted to the next rank. If you're within the promotion eligibility window, meaning that you have met the time and grade criteria, time and service criteria, and you have no referral reports, then you're promotion eligible. Yes. Answer the question if it's a referral or not. If it is, remember, if it is a referral report, you're going to have to go with manual signatures for the member. And if there is a quality force review, which should always be yes, and this is usually conducted by the first sergeant, where he looks at the member's PIF, he assesses the member's performance, he looks at all of those factors, training folders, things like that, to make sure that the member has no derogatory information that may discredit the assessment of the rater. And then last but not least, you have your final evaluator, which according to the FI can be the senior rater as well. So depending on how the chain of command looks like, it could be the senior rater. And then you'll have one final statement, which for most people is considered your push statement or your promotion statement, where the senior rater will say, this is my number one guy because of, and then action, impact, result. And it'll have typically at the end, something like promote, not in caps, promote to, in this case, senior master sergeant. Then we have the block that will identify, again, if the senior rater happens to be also our final evaluator. So you can double check it right here. In this case, it will be senior rater. No forced endorsement required. And the forced endorsement box will be checked when the senior rater is also the rater. So if Lieutenant Colonel Luis A. Lugo would be my rater, then this box would be checked in accordance with 362406. Then we'll have the senior rater stratification. In this case, it's a Master Sergeant EPR, top 10% of Master Sergeants. And last but not least, we'll have, again, the information. In this case, happens to be that the Senior Rater is also the same individual. We'll have the digital signature right here. And I honestly have never seen Functional Examiner or Air Force Advisor filled before. Let me pause this video really quick and look up the AFI to be able to give you real guidance on this. So it looks like a functional examiner is designated to ensure functional oversight is provided for individuals in specific career fields. Interesting. And looks like after everything is done, gone through the rating chain, then this person weighs in. So I'm sure we will know if we have a functional examiner within our ranks. And if you have any other questions, again, 36-2406, Officer Enlisted Evaluations. So last but not least, we'll have our remarks section, which typically is used for acronyms. And that's about all I've seen it used for. Actually, it says right here, only use this section to spell out uncommon acronyms or to place required comments in accordance with the AFI. Which I know that the functional examiner or Air Force advisor can fill in a form 77 if the space is not enough here. Last but not least, we'll have section 12, which is the ratee's acknowledgement. And again, this will only happen the day of the static closeout date. This cannot happen before. This has to happen on the last day, which is 30 September. And if the member is not available to sign, we'll put that in. Or if the ratee refused to sign, we'll put that in as well. And it'll be marked by the date. I hope this has helped. I know this is bullet writing, really effective writing, but effective writing also means knowing your products, your deliverables, your expectations. And so I figured I had to cover this with you guys to make sure that everything is able to put itself together and make some kind of sense. And a little different from Form 11, Form 910 will have extra section there called followership and leadership, which is a little bit different, and that's also on the first page. So on your first page, you're going to have performance and leadership. I think it's in primary duties. You'll have followership and leadership, and then you'll have harm and concept. And then the sections go in sequential order. So the additional raters comments is not going to be Section 7, it'll be Section 8 for Air Force Form 910, and the numbers will continue to trickle down. Alright, it says day 3, but if you are an expedient learner, then this could be done in day 2 or day 1. This section won't have any slides. This is more of you yourself now taking the initiative to take care of yourself or your subordinate and begin writing. Now is the time to get organized, and what I'd like you to do is contact whoever's teaching this seminar, if it's me or it's somebody else, and start getting that critical thing that we often seek: feedback. After this slide, or you will get my information here soon to be able to contact me if you have any questions, if you want feedback on your evaluations or your decorations or your medals. If you are a member that attended my course, you can definitely send those submissions to me so I can give you some feedback and we can start discussing some of the traps that we may be seeing or get some pointers. And remember, practice makes perfect, and everything that we've learned today requires practice. We do not practice, we're going to get rusty and we're going to deteriorate our skill sets. Again, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions. So again, if you have any questions, it has been a really long seminar, but I hope that it has been fruitful for you and that you have gotten all the skills or concepts that you require to improve your writing abilities, or if it was just a refresher, I hope that it was useful. If you have any suggestions for improvement, please do not hesitate to contact us. And please, 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 for any questions or feedback on any type of material that you're writing, if you took this course, by all means, go ahead and hit me up. My email is provided at the beginning of this course. And thank you again for your time.